Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm one of the hosts of this show, and every week we feature smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. And if you check out our archives, we've got lots of great episodes in there for you to listen to, including companies like Netflix, Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, and many more. And before we get into this interview, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We are the easy button for any company to launch and run a podcast. We do three things: strategy, accountability, and full execution. And we even invented what some are calling the Wix of B2B podcasting. It's our platform podcast co-pilot. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to our website at rise25.com or email our team at support@rise25.com. All right, my guest today is John Grace. He's the founder of Investors Advantage Corp, an expert in wealth management. And we're going to talk about that as well. But we're also going to dive into his background and his story. Grew up in South Los Angeles. And John, it's a pleasure to have you here today. And I was talking to you last time about what you were like as a kid. And I always loved to know what people were like, any kind of entrepreneurial hustles they had at a young age. And you grew up mowing lawns, and you said that you loved the smell of fresh cut grass, which is one motivation. The other kind of green is the other kind of motivation behind mowing lawns. I imagine it wasn't just the smell of the grass that was motivating you. So talk a little bit about what that was like when you were growing up.
Well, it used to be a lot easier, John. It's good to be with you, right? Whether it was throwing your newspaper or you had your own money. That's the point, right? So for the first time, you weren't looking for a handout increase in your allowance. No, this is my money, so I get to save and do with it as I wish. That's very satisfying, and being outside to me is also very satisfying. So yeah, it hits a lot of notes.
And so you started doing that, and you had a lot of gardeners in the area. And did you go around knocking on doors? Did you ask neighbors? Like, how did you get your first few clients?
Yeah, well, I started on my own lawn, right? And the neighbors would notice how that looked really good. And some of them would approach me. Sometimes when I noticed that a lawn needed some work, I would go knock on the door. So that's the way you kind of figure out, hey, maybe you didn't notice how these lawns are looking, but guess what? We can take care of your lawn. And I do hedges too. So let's get started. And yeah, it was great fun. Good memories there.
Talk to me a little bit about what your upbringing was like, because you grew up on the south side and you went up to school on the west side. For those who don't know Los Angeles, explain that to me. Like, socioeconomically, what was that like, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, to my friends at school, yeah, I grew up in the flatlands. That's what they called it because they lived on the hill, right? And that was an area that
for those who don't know California, hills generally nicer,
yes.
Flats generally not as nice because you get views, and everyone wants a view in California.
Everybody wants a view. Yes, yes, and that's what I saw every day. Going back and forth to I have a set of godparents. He was a pharmacist, and they bought a house on the hill. And they said, yes, you can use our address to go to elementary, middle school, and high school. And every day I would see the people who were, working, good people. But these folks on the hill, my goodness, where there's two Cadillacs and you could look out the back window over the fence and see the view of Los Angeles. And it's just commanding all this growth and all this opulence. So I think that probably planted a seed, if you will, because, on a daily basis, you're seeing the people who are really well-to-do and the ones who are not so well-to-do. And that probably was the catalyst for me to kind of wonder about all this. And then I happened to be a best man in a Jewish wedding, and the family had bought in the marina, and he heard me talking.
Marina Del Rey area, nice. Father. Marina Del Rey, the beautiful area of Los Angeles.
Beautiful area. More water, more views, more vistas. Who doesn't like the ocean, right? I certainly do. And the father of the groom said, hey, I'm a financial advisor, and I'm willing to be your mentor if you'd like. I'll coach you on how you too can be a financial advisor. I'm like, really? Explain more. How much blood do you want? Okay, let's get started. Yeah.
So what did he see in you? Why do you think? Why did he make that offer to you?
I never asked that question, but I suspect that, I had to come over to the house for training. I had to make sure the car was clean. I had to make sure that I showed up in suit and tie for the training, just with him for the classes, right? And we would go through some things that he learned so I could get licensed. And it might have something to do that for the most part, I wasn't disheveled and I was clean cut and I could speak pretty well. And he thought that might be a good combination to see where I might go with under his tutelage.
It's funny how
Now,
life
let me say
just
this real
pivots.
quick.
It's funny how
Yeah.
life just takes a turn on that one relationship, one person like
Well,
that.
and to your point, this is just 2019. I was flying up to Seattle for a conference, and that's where the groom and his wife now live. And I'm on the airplane on the phone with the groom's son in Boston, who says, "I wanted to talk to you because my dad says you were trained by my grandfather, and maybe you could give me some pointers on whether or not I should be a financial advisor." I'm like, "Oh my goodness, talk about who would have thunk." I'm like, "Listen, you need to know, Zach, you own me, all right? Whatever I can do, count on it."
That
All
feels
right.
like
And
a heavy sense of obligation.
100%. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know how this happened, but man, I am here. You do tell me what you need, and I am there. And by the way, you might be interested to know that I can tell you some stories about your grandfather you didn't get because I know you two never met.
Oh, that's
So we
really
can
nice.
we can talk about that too.
Was that really gratifying being able to tell him stories about his
Oh,
grandfather that he hadn't met?
100%.
Yeah.
Priceless. Both
Wow.
combinations. And by the way, he did get licensed and he's in the business.
Wow. Wow. Why do you think it skipped a generation like that? Why did the grandson get interested in going into it?
Well, the son became a biomedical engineer.
Oh, not
Dad
too shabby.
the group. Yeah, really smart guy, and that's what he wanted to do when he grew up, and that's what he did.
You also had a mentor, Ken Morse.
That's his name.
That was the same one.
Yes, sir.
Got
That's
it.
the
Got it.
groom's dad. Yes,
Got it.
Kim Morse. Yes.
So you get this training, and then what happens next? You get a job in the industry?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I like to say, it sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Back in the old days, if you weren't with Mother Merrill as a stockbroker, you weren't really legit. And the
So
constant
Merrill
war
Lynch was the brokerage that everyone
was
depended on.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
huge. Okay.
Mother Merrill. All right, they wrote the rules until they went away. But at that time, it was like a boxing match, because for the most part, people were either stockbrokers or they were insurance brokers, and never the two shall meet. And he happened to be with the company that was the largest independent financial planning organization, not with Mother Merrill. They didn't do financial planning, they were stockbrokers. But this was like a marriage, if you will, between, well, we need to put a plan on both sides of the equation. If you live too long or die too soon, we want financially it to be a non-event. So we're not mired too far to the left in stocks nor too right on the side of insurance. We need to do both so that whether you, as I say, live too long or die too soon, financially you can see what it takes to be better off. So that was a beautiful beginning. And lo and behold, and then we got to the point where we would say about ourselves, because we weren't Mother Merrill, we were on the dark side. Okay. And then guess what? Merrill Lynch went away. Now Bank of America owns Merrill Lynch. And so many of the advisors that were with the big wirehouses came to the dark side and started doing financial planning.
But you were way ahead of your time then, because you founded your company in 1979, back when there weren't as many independent advisories back then.
Well, that's when I got my first license. I started Investors Advantage around 86.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Still early though, right? I mean,
it was still early.
was that pretty
Yes.
contrarian at the time? Did that take some convincing to explain to people why you shouldn't go with a big company like Merrill, why they should trust you?
Well, for me, it's about determining what you think is the better or the best offer. Not to be too mired in whatever you do. To me, we should all be a lot more agile. And as I say, if we're going to do a financial plan, it's not just how much money can you put in the stock market? And it's not about what's your budget for buying the most insurance somebody can't sell you. It takes a more thorough approach to really figure out when do you want to make work optional. Most people aren't doing that, but for me, that just seemed like the right thing to do. And by the way, when I talk to young people now and they're saying, well, I'm getting these offers, what do you think I should do? I said, you need to go home and look in the mirror before you take any offer and really assess what's important to you. What do you think constitutes doing really good work in this industry? Then look for the firm that thinks like you, because there are a lot of firms that will hire you and they will get you high on their system, and then you can't leave there, or you can't take your clients with you. They've got you by the short hair. So really look in your own heart and figure out, do you want to be with a banking company? Do you want to be more insurance-based? Do you want to be more of a product person? Do you want to be commissioned? Do you want to be paid as a flat fee for the assets under management? These are the questions you need to ask yourself and look at the operations that are doing what it is they do, and then go interview these operations that you already believe are close to how you think business should be done. Otherwise, you're gonna get in, and then you're gonna have regrets, and it's gonna be really difficult to break rank.
I want to ask you about what I think was maybe a bit of a turning point for you. You have said that you started with a bad attitude, thinking you'd never be good enough, and then you started paying up to $10,000 a year for research, which in the at the time that you started must have been a massive amount. Talk a little bit about how that played a role in kind of changing your attitude, changing your thinking.
Yeah, that's an interesting experience as I look back. You can imagine being African American and talking about stocks. This is not a place that we generally play. This isn't basketball or football or track, right? And I'm not a musician, not an entertainer. And so when I went to my first class, the instructor was there, and then you had to sign in and sign out to verify that you were there for the class. But I'm looking at the people in the room, and I'm like, and you just look at these folks, and they've all got their fancy calculators, and they just look smart as they could possibly be. And I look at me walking in that room, going, uh-oh, am I in the right room? Am I gonna make it here? But that probably reveals a lack of confidence, right? It's like, basic decision. I'm not good enough. That wasn't a question. That was a statement. And as I'm signing out the first day for this class, Joe Kornecki, that was the instructor's name, he said, I was looking forward to meeting you. I said, why? What's wrong? He said, what's your name? I go, why? What's wrong? He goes, well, you know what grace means, don't you? And I go, what's it mean? He goes, well, it means unmerited favor. And he can see me
unmerited favor.
Unmerited favor. Well, you don't get it, do you? And you're just standing there and you're like, I can feel the boom coming. I can't tell where it's coming from, but I know I'm being set up for something. And he finishes with, well, it's an unmerited favor, John, means like God's gift, where you get something you didn't deserve. That's the definition of grace. And I'm like, really?
Was it a diss or I can't tell.
No, he thought it was a great name. That's why he was looking forward to meeting me, John Grace.
Okay.
Combination. But I never heard that before, so I didn't know where he's coming from.
I can see how you like kind of your shoulders are hunching up. Like, wait a second, what is he trying to say to me here?
Yeah, where am I going to get booted? Okay, what's going to happen next? Can I come back for the next class? But that's how the first stage, if you will. And then ultimately, as I said, I realized I made a bad statement saying, you're not enough. That's a bad statement. So I discovered that what I need to do was turn that around into a question, because when you make a statement, what you do is you fill in all the blanks with why that is true. But if you ask an open-ended question, guess what? You have to fill in the blanks with some answers, but you don't already know the answers. So what I decided to do is to really determine what's average. What do I have to do to figure out in the profession, regardless of complexion, age, gender, what's average? What do most advisors do? Let me see if I can figure that out. And then once I have that basis, the question becomes, how can I beat average? Now that's a damn good question. All right.
Hmm.
Let's see what everybody else is doing. Kind of like the advice I'm giving to the young people now. And what you need to do, John, is figure out what you think is the right thing and see what average is, and then see what you can do to be better than average. If you get better than a C, that's better than average. And so that's how we actually started finding out about a research company that doesn't have product to sell. Because John, when you have product to sell, whatever the provider, the hierarchy is telling you what, how much of this you should sell.
Therefore, you must buy my mutual fund or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. My ETF, my mutual fund, my annuity. Okay. Long-term care. Put that in everybody's pockets. Okay.
Right.
So yeah, that's probably not the best way to go about business. But if you're paying for research where they don't have anything to sell except information, that's different. All right. And if the information is doing something unlike most firms rely on, looking at the buying and selling behavior of consumers based on age, well, that's different than looking at the data relative to how much of what you sold.
I want to go back, though, to this idea that you believed you were less than good, and you paid more money for independent research. What else did you do in order to convince yourself that you were less than good? Did you do personal development? Did you read inspirational books? Did you start hanging out with a crowd of more successful people? Like, what are the specific things that you did?
All of the above. And on top of that, I managed to secure a supervisory license so that I could talk to other supervisors about what my peers are doing. So now I can, so I had a number of people where I was a supervisor, but I also had access to other supervisors where I could get from them, what are you guys thinking? What are you guys doing? What are you preparing for? I love engineers because their logic is, let's look at the worst case scenario, see if we're prepared for that. If we're ready for that, we're probably ready for just about anything. But they don't look at it from the standpoint of, give me the rosiest story you can pass on. They don't like that pie in the sky stuff. Their attitude is, particularly aerospace engineers, and guess what? We've worked a lot with engineers. Their attitude is, listen, we put a man and a woman on the moon, we brought them back safely. So what have you done?
And fortunately, in Southern California, there are a fair amount of aerospace engineers. There have been over the last 30 years. There's a lot of aerospace companies. How did you, it's one thing to know, I like working with engineers. Did you just kind of like build a reputation working with some of the clients, and then they recommend you to their peers and colleagues?
Okay, so here's my first time with a group of engineers. A client introduced me to her boyfriend. We became friends, and turned out that we grew up in the same neighborhood, but I did not go to the high school that I was supposed to go to, so we never met. But he managed to start doing business, and he hosted me coming into TRW, remember, in Manhattan Beach back in the 70s and 80s, and had me do a presentation in front of his peers. It was a round auditorium, as I recall. And I will tell you, I had practiced. I met with my supervisors, my mentors. I thought I was ready. Man, they asked me some questions. I walked out of there like with my hat on, and the door wasn't open. I mean, I just slid underneath the closed door because I got obliterated. So when I got back to the office and everybody's going, how'd it go? How'd it go? I said, well, I have to tell you the truth. It did not go well, and I will be back. So I use that to say, okay, that wasn't fun, but these are smart people. And man, if you can work with smart people, that's a good way to go. So I kept working on my presentation and the ideas, and tested them with other engineers, and got back to a couple of other presentations a year or two later. And we're off. So
it actually had a result of motivating you to
100%.
Yeah, to be more prepared the next time to answer the questions. Yes. The engineers probably ask very detailed, specific questions.
Very specific questions, and they look at you to see if they can discern your lying through your teeth. They will call you on it. Okay,
so they're a tough crowd.
They're not afraid of a conversation. Okay, they're not afraid also to be mistaken, or they're willing to learn. Well, gosh darn it, that's healthy.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight that you realize that was the kind of the psychosomatic qualities around the type of client that you were drawn to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got engineers of all stripes now. I love these people because they are good at critical thinking, and I mean, couldn't we use some more of that these
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
John?
I want to ask.
Thinking.
I
And
want to
and
ask
they and
about
they
it.
don't have a problem with math. Math's the only four-letter word Americans are afraid to use. They don't have a problem.
Right. Right. I want to ask you about you start the company in the 80s. There have been so many booms and busts in that period of time. Um, just so many, from the dot-com meltdown to COVID to the 2008, Great Recession. What do you think that has been the reason that you've stuck around all these years? You managed to survive.
Yeah, well, we're willing to learn, and we're learning. We're willing to apply the technology, and also do some introspection, and look at how the average advisor works. And it's a great question because I submit that millennials have a problem with many of my peers because they saw their parents go through not one but two 50% losses: 2002, 08, 09. That's two in a decade. Okay. Now, by
Yeah.
the way, it was in late '06 that my leading math man and I, he was a new hire at the time, and I went to a workshop where the speaker said this: ladies and gentlemen, let's be ridiculous. There's been one 50% loss so far this decade. Let's be ridiculous and imagine there could be two 50% losses in the same decade. On the way back to the office, I looked to my leading math man and go, "You're better at math than I am. And I've been looking at some technology that I think could be useful, but I can't tell which ones are good. So here's the 1-2 punch we need to work on immediately." He got my attention with the question. Nobody asked a question like that, but I love the question. Who knows what's going to happen? Please look at the technology, figure out what we can use, and let's see what we can do to start as early as possible going to our clients to say, here's what we think makes sense for you to do in the case that losses are around the corner, where we might be able to limit your losses. Okay. And that's what we did. And we started, happens to be better to be lucky than good, in January of '07, long before 2008, saying, "Here, John, here's some things we think you can do they're not here yet, but they could be around the corner to limit your losses." And some clients said, "Oh yeah, let's do that." And some clients said, "We're fine." And then in '09, the ones who said, "Yeah, let's do that," they come back going, "That was a good thing." And the ones who didn't said, "Is this what you were talking about? Maybe we should do what you had in mind." But notice, look, the good news back then, like your parents, right? They were making contributions to their 401k accounts, to their retirement accounts. So those 50% declines was actually a blessing when you're making contributions.
Yeah.
Now, that blessing becomes a curse when you start taking withdrawals. So one of the reasons that I love doing what I'm doing is because we don't look nor talk like most of my peers who say things like, "Write it out. Don't look at your statements." I mean, really? Live with the losses. No, 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 no. I've got good news for you. There are ways that investors have been successful at limiting their losses. You might want to see what others have done in the event the next time is worse than the last two times, and it takes even longer to recover. This is a good time to see what you can do in advance before the dam breaks to see how you can limit those losses as opposed to get kicked in the assets again.
Yeah. I want to ask about, you know, how do you push back on clients? You mentioned that, in 2007, you went to the clients and said, okay, we think you should be prepared for adjustments, losses in the future. How do you know how much to push back against the ones who are like, oh no, it's fine. This will keep
Yeah,
on riding.
yeah. No, you leave them there. This is your money. This is your call. You make the call. But let's put it this way. I would rather be the canary in the coal mine before the grits hit the pan to say,
Yeah.
I don't know that this will play out, but here's some things that we now see are available to you. You want to partake? Yay. You don't? No. And if you do, fine. And if you don't, that's fine. But I won't feel guilty if the grits hit the pan again and your account's down 50% again when it didn't need to be, because we had that conversation about what might happen and you chose to put it on ice. You chose not to take any action.
Only so much you can do, I guess. Yeah.
Yep. Lead that horse to water.
We're almost out of time here, but I want to ask, you mentioned when you first got into the profession, there weren't many that looked like you. And, they were, most African Americans at the time were known for sports or music or something like that. How do you think the profession has come along now? Is it a more diverse profession now?
It's not really. I mean, it's I don't know the numbers, but let's put it this way. We're with LPL Financial. There are 25,000 licensed advisors around the country. Best I can tell, there may be. Well, let's see. I like to look at not just African American, but all ethnicities. This is America, and I guess some people have a problem with the browning of America, but it is real and it is happening. And so, what I believe, I'm looking at the numbers that I'm aware of, whether it's Latinos or Asian Americans or African Americans. I would be surprised. I would be absolutely surprised if the number was as high as 400 out of 25,000.
Wow.
So not much has changed.
Wow. And so what do you think can be done about that?
Well, I think it starts with this. We need to encourage each other to do critical thinking. We need to recognize that we just can't buy the biggest house and expect life to be fantastic. We need to encourage each other to do math, to really assess what's important to you, to encourage folks to recognize, let's do what it takes for you to see how you might make work optional on your terms. And it would not surprise me that we see some big surprises where people made some magnificent bets that played well for the last 30 years. And so they get 100% comfortable with this tree still going to grow to the sky. And, if we have a real reckoning as far as the economy, which would not surprise me, where the things that people got really high on and they've got like one client who happens to be an engineer. He's got a lot of money in his 401k, but they're 5 paid off homes. That's probably 75% of his net worth in one asset class. If that's not a situation that's poised for an uh-oh moment, I don't know what is. And whether it's NVIDIA or Amgen or, one friend of mine, she has 12 houses. People have made some big bets, and the economy and the gains have been so fantastic. They're not looking to see what the Yales and the endowments are doing, where they only have 3% of their portfolio. Last I looked, Yale endowment in U.S. stocks. The industry is still suggesting you, your mother, your parents, your sister, everybody 60-40. We can agree that's a two-legged stool. And we look at the endowments like Yale and Harvard. I count 5, 6, 7 legs under their stool. I also noticed that their portfolio is not one position is larger than 24%. So for most of us, that's a small bet. Yeah.
Well, John, this has been great. Thanks for your time. Where can people go to learn more about you and learn more about Investors Advantage?
Well, you can see us at Westlake Financial Advisors, Investors Advantage. We'd love, by the way, John, we like to take 15 minutes with folks to see how we might be of value. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but we want people to be better prepared than they ever have been, because things have a way of going, in the middle of the night, and now it spoils. And maybe, like I say, if we look at the Great Depression, it took 25 years for stocks to come back. It took New York real estate 40 years to come back, when life expectancy was 57.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a long time. And remember, with the stocks, the 25 years, you had to do what? Not sell a share for it to come back.
Yeah. John, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to be with you. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.